Today I want to break down 5 of the biggest mistakes that make people sound unclear when they talk, and how to actually fix them. These are mistakes that I see everywhere, in meetings, on stage, in casual conversations. And once you start noticing them, you'll see them everywhere, not just in others, but also yourself. And the good news is that the fixes are quite easy. And once you actually fix them, people will start paying attention to you in a completely different way. By the way, right now I'm running a 10-day group program inside my community where we practice these skills step by step. So if you want to train them a bit further with me directly, join the community via the link down below. But now in this video, let's focus on the mistakes that make people sound unclear, why they matter, and what simple fixes you can do to make your communication sharper immediately. Now, one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people sound unclear when they speak is because of rambling. So you start talking and halfway through you realize that you don't really know where you're going. So you add a bit more words, a bit more details, you circle around, you repeat yourself, you try to land your point, but it just keeps drifting away and away and away. So what happens in the room? Well, your audience gets lost. They don't understand what your point is or what's just noise. And the more they get lost, the more you try to rescue your point by adding even more words, which makes it even messier. Now, rambling doesn't just confuse the audience, it kills your confidence. Because halfway through your sentence, you feel yourself losing them. And once you feel that, you panic and you try to add more. And the spiral just continues. So what's the fix? Well, structure. It sounds very easy when I say it like that, but I'm actually going to give you something that would help you structure. And you don't need to complicate it with these extremely detailed frameworks. I'm going to give you one that can help you in any situation. And I like the PREP framework. I've talked about this in another video, but I think it's so incredibly good. And it stands for point, reason, example, and then point again. So it works like this. You start with your main point, and then you give the reason behind it. And then you add an example that makes it actually tangible. And then you restate your point again so it actually lands. Because people mostly remember what was said the last. So why does this work? Well, it gives your brain and the audience a track to actually follow. So instead of chasing your thoughts, they get a complete package every time. And because you now know this structure, you can feel calmer while actually speaking, which makes you look more confident. So let me show you a quick version. Let's say the point is clarity matters in communication. Well, my point would be clarity matters in communication, because without clarity, people don't remember what you say. They only remember feeling confused. An example of this, think of the last time someone explained a process with 10 side notes. You didn't walk away with the process. You walked away with frustration. So I state my point again. That's why clarity matters. That's very simple. It's sharp. And you can use this in meetings, in presentations, in interviews, even in casual conversations. It is quite a formal framework, but it will help you structure your thoughts before you ever speak. And if you want to make it simpler, you can skip the last point. You can make it even shorter. Just use one sentence like I did for each point. And here's the actual benefit. The more you practice using structures like the PREP, the more natural it becomes. So you don't have to force it. You don't have to think of it every time. Because over time, your brain learns to organize your thoughts this way automatically. Which means clarity becomes something that you don't have to chase in the moment. It becomes your default way of speaking. Now, rambling is one problem. But even if you avoid rambling, there's another trap. And that is too much detail. This one feels productive. You think, if I just give them the full information, they'll understand. So you include every background fact, every technical term, every statistic, every side note. But the result? Your main point gets buried in a mountain of data. So let me give you an example. Try to imagine that you are going to explain a new project to your colleague. And instead of just saying, we are going to fix our reporting systems so our numbers actually match reality, you start saying something very complicated, like, so the CRM connects to the API and that pulls data into the warehouse, but right now that transformation layer has gaps, and those gaps cause discrepancies, and the reporting system can't reconcile them. You've lost them. You've lost your colleague. What should you do instead? Well, you should strip it back to the essential. You should ask yourself, what does my audience really need? What do they actually need to know right now? Not everything you know, just the parts that help them understand your point or take action. Understand the project so they know what they're about to do. And I promise you, if they need more details, they will ask for more details. But if they don't, you should not be giving them. Think of details like seasoning. A little bit will enhance the flavor, but a lot will just completely destroy the whole meal. So if you want people to actually follow you, understand you, you have to give them the main point, and that's it. Then only if they ask, if they only need it, add the details to help. And the third mistake is weak language, undermining yourself. This is when you undercut your own point by adding phrases like, I'm not sure, but this might not make sense, but maybe it's just me, but, right? You think you're being polite or humble, but really what the audience only hears is uncertainty. And if you don't actually believe in your own point, why should they? This mistake is so incredibly common because it feels safer. You soften your words because if you're in the wrong, it will not hurt as much. But the cost is that you also soften your own credibility. Now the actual shift is just state your point directly. So instead of, I think maybe option B could work, just say option B is the better way. Notice you can still be respectful. You're not forcing your opinion on anyone. You're just presenting it with confidence. And the actual truth is that even if you're not 100% sure, you have to frame it with certainty. Because if you don't stand behind your own idea, why should they? Now, if you really do want to soften, do it by framing respectfully, not by weakening your actual language. For example, one perspective to consider is this. Here's why I lean toward option B. And that way you still stay assertive and respectful, but at the same time you don't destroy your credibility. Now, moving along, let's talk about delivery. When you're actually speaking, there's two habits here that instantly make you sound unclear. Speaking too fast or speaking too softly. When you speak too fast, people cannot process what you're saying. The brain lags behind, and once they're behind, it becomes even more difficult, so they just give up. But when you speak too softly, they have to strain to actually hear you. They have to sit like this and strain to be able to hear you. And when listening feels like a lot of work, they will stop trying. So what's the actual fix? Well, for speed, you have to get comfortable with pausing. Most people rush because silence feels awkward, but silence is the powerful tool. It is the superpower. It gives your audience time to absorb your point, and it gives you to think before speaking. Now here's a very simple way to practice it. After you finish a sentence, close your mouth. Because this way, you cannot say any filler words, which only dilute your message, and you have to pause. When you close your mouth, you're literally not able to do anything else. So you have to pause. That is my number one tip. Now for volume, think of speaking to someone as if they're standing 1 to 2 meters further away than they actually are, and speak at that volume. So you're not yelling, you're not shouting, just projecting with a bit more presence. So why does this work? Well, because your voice isn't just about being heard, it's also about making listening as easy as possible. When people don't have to work to understand what you're saying, they can actually focus on your message and not strain themselves to hear you. The last one is lack of emphasis and energy. This is when every word sounds the same, flat, monotone, no variation. The problem is that if everything sounds the same, nothing stands out, right? Your audience has no idea what's important. So let me give you an example. If I were to sit and tap my chair like this for a long period of time, and you have this sound behind you all day, eventually you will stop hearing it. You'll tune it out. But if I suddenly change the rhythm, you will hear it again. And that is why we want variation in our way of speaking, in our delivery, because we keep people engaged. So the fix is use vocal variety. You have to raise your voice slightly when something becomes exciting or when you're curious. You have to pause to let your message sink in, and use your face and use your body language to enhance your message. Your face is literally the remote control for your tonality when you're speaking. So if I smile, I will instantly sound more warm. If I look angry, I will sound more angry. So let me give you an example. If I say, this is the one mistake that ruins clarity, it will just pass by because there's no clear emphasis on why this matters or what even is the point. But if I suddenly say, this is the one mistake that ruins clarity, suddenly it becomes instantly clear on what this is about. So those are the 5 most common mistakes that people make that make them sound unsure. The first one was rambling, and you fix this with a very simple framework like the PrEP framework. Or you found something else that helps you better. And then overloading with details. You have to strip it back to the essentials. What is your actual point? And then weak language. You have to stand behind your words. Even if you're not 100% sure, if you don't stand behind your own words, why should they? And then speaking too fast or speaking too softly, so you have to pause to regulate your rhythm and your pace, and then project volume to actually make people hear you so they don't have to strain to understand you. And then a lack of emphasis. Add a bit of energy so your key points actually land, so we understand what your key points are. And the great thing is that every one of these are fixable, as I've just walked you through how to do it. And once you start practicing them, clarity becomes easier and easier for every single time. Because clarity doesn't come from always trying to over-explain everything. Sometimes the best thing is to just strip it back to the essentials, removing all the noise so your main point, your main idea actually lands. If this helped, hit subscribe. I share new videos like this every single week to help you master communication, the #1 high income skill. And if you want to take this a bit further and actually practice these steps live in real time with me, you can now join my community via the link down below. See you in there and see you in the next video. Bye bye.